All right, Max, what are we reviewing today? Saying this a little bit like this because I've tried this like 2 or 3 times. Something went wrong at the beginning of every one. I don't normally start these over. I'm telling you, the viewer, like you aren't me, the two people watching this. Anyway, it's The Talk. That's what we're doing today. It's by Darrin Bell. You can see it right here. He's the winner of a Pulitzer Prize. An amazing cartoonist, a super interesting memoir. It's really about the African American experience during the, more like 80s, 90s into present day life. It's framed in such a cool way. It's just, you can tell this guy is just a professional from start to finish. We'll get into it more, the details, but it's a beautiful story about him really from, practically being a toddler up until him watching his own kids and answering hard questions. I'm going to show my patent pending scoring here thing right now just to set the scene straight. You can see that I actually mislabeled this originally because there are so many similarities to a recent book that I also reviewed by Mira Jacobs, I believe, called Good Talk. Which, she's an Indian American, also dealing with hard conversations with her kids, basically about America, race, all those things. And a bit of this overlaps with that. Like, this is definitely a very personal memoir story, similar. And the exact same kind of questions pop up in this story. I'm going to then run through all the gambit. I'm definitely going to do a lot of comparisons because I've now reviewed enough, I think, graphic novels in this YouTube thing to start being self-referential. But starting off, characters. Give this an 8. The titular character, obviously, is the, author, the autobiographical guy behind the story, Darrin. It begins beautifully with, a device that's used throughout the book is like his first interaction with some of the scary parts of racism from his perspective, or as a kid dealing with like police dogs, and the reactions you can have to that interaction is sort of, running away and being scared, or like letting the dog sort of sniff you. And this keeps coming up again and again. There's a lot of other good characters in this book, outside of Darrin as the central character. His mom plays a really central role and comes off, I think, very wise and maternal. His brother also is kind of a foil to him a little bit, like might be dissuading him at certain points. He has several romantic interests and then future kids that become involved. And then, of course, like the police, the authority, the kind of forces that he sees as existential and threatening to him as a Black American come up as well. And he really does make a very compelling case, and hard not to side with his perspective through this book. I like, again, I'm gonna point out little details here ahead of the thing. Like, look how beautifully in this one scene, which I'm not trying to again spoil everything, but he kind of transforms his perspective of seeing this particular cop into this attack dog that he was scared of as a kid. This is the kind of like just professionalism I think that this comic book, this graphic novel screams. Like, if you just want to read something high quality, you could be like a very right leaning person and disagree with a lot of the stuff that is taken away from this, because obviously everyone writes a story with a purpose to get across. This is definitely, not a pro cop book, and blah blah blah. But man, just, you have to respect how good everything is. Like, there is so many. It's just massive respect for everything that goes into this book. You can tell it's put together by somebody that also was writing like comics that would go into, I think, like a proper newspaper for a living, because like he blends this in so nicely too. But anyway, so I'll come back to the characters. I think that he really carries it as the core character. His mom and his brother also play a good role. His grandpa, but so a very high score there. I think that I didn't get the sense of like, yeah, I have some other books that I like the whole cast of characters a bit more strongly, but still very good score. Art, I gave it a 6. I showed a couple of the pages I thought were really cool. Again, I think he just does so much clever stuff here. Like, this is a good page about pecking order in various stages of life and places. Like, I'm really biased. I'm like a huge like web comic fan as well, and there's a bit of this infused in that where a lot of pages feel like he might have written a web comic about a similar concept, and then he just has a really nice way of blending it into the story. But it's very unique. Like, there's a different idea almost on every other page. It feels like this influences the X Factor score later, but I really like that about the art here. You can also see like it's a very like interesting mix of tones. Like, a lot of the pages are like blue and black and white, and that's all you get. Later in the book, you discover some of the more interesting, like daunting pages, which just beautiful. Like, I love how they blend that in. An interesting thing too is, I mean, it's very purposeful, but there's I don't know how to say it exactly. He tries to make certain details like less interesting, I think, or like blurry in a sense. Like, every character's eyes and often even their facial expressions, there's kind of like a noisiness that's introduced into it. I like it. Overall, though, is the art the strongest piece here? I think probably not for me personally. I think like some of what the art does is really cool, but I really feel like it's more propelled by the interesting ideas that support how the art comes across, if that makes sense. Like, there are certain pages where he's not doing a really clever thing with some kind of like metaphor. It's just more of like a traditional webcomic. Like, this is him getting caught by his mom in a sense, like after going to a store. And I don't hate how it looks. I like how it looks. I just don't think it's the reason I would come and reread this again. And I have read this now twice. It's much more for, I think, the characters, the history, and the X Factor. But moving on, history and culture. Yeah, I mean, this book, to reference previous things I've reviewed, I think in terms of it, like serious tones, we've reviewed books that the African American experience in the U.S. is an entire, area, I think, of graphic novels of this type, right? We've reviewed Nat Turner, which I think is the most violent extreme of the spectrum, right? We are talking about both an extreme violence towards Americans, like slavery, and also an extreme reaction where, killing children in their beds and all that stuff, like a very bloody revolution. On the other side is books like, Wash Day Diaries, where it's much more of the experience being in the 21st century as an African American, going through some of the microaggressions one does, and also like showing a slice of life kind of thing. This feels like in the middle, where he's tackling big issues in the talk. It is like more similar to Mira Jacobs' Good Talk. It's tackling things around real racism that ends people's lives. Like the hot topic issues of the last 20 years with Trayvon Martin and George Floyd and all of that stuff. They really tackled this in a good way, while also, I think, balancing the other sidedness, where he doesn't ever, I think, throw people under the bus and assumes good things. A lot of symbolism too around the ways he copes with his worries and fears. So I think in terms of history culture, you have to give it a solid score. Is it like walking us through the hardest part of American history? Is it 100% accurate? Is it subjective? All these things kind of weigh into this. Yes, I think this guy's trying to tell a particular story, but he blends in like music that's happening in that particular time, previous activism connected to the particular chapters he's talking about. All of it weaving back into his own experience. I think very good. Readability. I've already showed a bunch of pages here. Some pages can be really dense and wordy, and at the same time, there's quite a lot of other ones which, again, read pretty dang quick. You're almost going like left or right, and I think that the fact that you care about the central character so much does propel you along. At least from my perspective, I really enjoyed seeing this guy's like life play out, and so I think readability definitely like above average. It is a longer book. I did not read this in a single night. It took like 3 or 4 nights, and I think the same time or the first time I read this, I similar. I actually think the first time I read this, I don't know if I actually finished the entire book, so I can't give it like a massive readability score. But coming back to it, I really have a ton of appreciation. I think it's really well crafted, really well done. And finally, the X Factor. Particularly at the end of the book, you just get so many good, cross sections of. It's a mix of like interesting art with his like web comics. He's like able to highlight some of the best stuff he's put together. This to me, it reminded me of one of the graphic novels I've reviewed here, which I'm going to off screen right now look up just because I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but where the well, I have to look this up right now. I'm just gonna wait. You're gonna have to wait too if you're even watching this. This is entertainment right here. I just have to know this. Worm. That's it. So Worm by Adele Rodriguez about Cuba and the U.S. He also is a famous cartoonist that got very, prominent criticizing Trump in his first term. Like, to keep drawing from stuff, this feels like, Worm blended with good talk and a smattering of something in between Nat Turner and Wash Day Diaries. It really did feel different in the sense that it's blending a bunch of those elements simultaneously. The use of color is so cool. Like, even on this page, I'm not trying to show too much of the art, but like you see that he deliberately has red for the Skittles and deliberately colors in certain parts of Obama getting sworn in, and many other pages are this monotone-ish, drabbish, blue saddish kind of color. So all this coming together, I really like this one. I think it is a wonderful memoir. It makes you reflect, and I think inescapably, for even somebody that's incredibly intelligent and has won a Pulitzer, you see through his very personal experience very blatant racism at certain points of his life, like surprisingly blatant. Even for someone that has read a bunch of these, it's like sad that some of these stories are true, and like I don't doubt them to be true. So I think whether or not you come down on certain parts of the divide politically, I think this is like a wonderful read. It really does give a first person account of like what people struggle with and have to encounter and have to deal with and have to like solve in some sense. And I think also paints a bit of a story of America the last 40 years or so. It takes you from the Challenger explosion to 9/11 to modern day, and all through the lens of this narrator who's boots on the ground living his own life. So The Talk, not Good Talk, although Good Talk is also great. High recommend, 7 out of 10, pretty monster score. And like always, I'm going to keep selling out and promoting my own book, which if you have kids and you're somehow not me watching this video, would love it if you picked up But I Can't Go to Bed Yet by me and an awesome illustrator, Ednar from Ender from Indonesia. And anyway, I'll leave it here. I'll post the link in the description, but that's it.